They thought we were just two old black folks out for coffee. They didn't ask questions. They drew conclusions. Next thing I know, my wife's crying, and strangers are watching officers tear through our car like we're criminals. But what they didn't know was that our son, a U.S. Marine, was just minutes away. And he wasn't coming to make a scene, that he was coming to make them see that I wasn't looking for trouble that morning, that I was just looking for a piece of pie. Delilah and I had been married for 51 years. 51 quiet, stubborn, beautiful years. We had raised 3 kids, buried 2 siblings, survived a house fire and 2 hurricanes, and still managed to keep holding hands in the grocery store. That morning, all I wanted was to surprise her. We weren't fancy folks. Never had been. But every now and then, I liked to pull out the old Mercury, white paint faded, radio barely working, and take her somewhere that reminded us of the early days. Before the children, before the pills and doctor appointments, before everything got so heavy. There's a little place just off Highway 48, past the pecan orchard, where the road curves like a lazy snake. AL's Diner. Not much to look at. Peeling paint, crooked windows. But their apple pie tastes like it was baked in heaven and left to cool on a windowsill in Mississippi. That Sunday morning, I put on my pressed tan slacks, my brown fedora with the dented crown, and I helped Delilah into her blue Sunday dress with the flowers on the hem. "You trying to court me again?" she smiled, swatting my hand away from her hip. "Always." I said that we didn't tell the kids. We didn't need company. We needed silence, shared glances, and maybe 2 slices of pie and some bitter black coffee. It was a sunny day, one of those southern spring mornings that make you forget you ever had a worry. The car purred gently, like it still remembered the first time I drove it off the lot. Delilah sang quietly as we rolled through the back roads. A hymn from her childhood, barely audible. I didn't say much. I just watched the way her fingers danced on her lap, the sunlight catching the silver in her curls, that I parked the Mercury beneath a big old elm that had probably seen as many seasons as I had. The gravel crackled under the tires. The air smelled of bacon grease and cinnamon. We smiled at each other. Just a smile. And then everything changed. The sound of tires spinning too fast on gravel. A car door slamming hard. Heavy boots. Fast footsteps. At first, I thought it was just another customer in a hurry for breakfast. But then I saw the flash of red and blue in the corner of my eye. 2 police officers. Both white. Both serious. One was built like a linebacker, tall and square-jawed, with sunglasses he never took off. The other was younger, early 20s maybe, with a slicked haircut and a smirk that made my stomach turn before he even spoke. They didn't greet us. They didn't say good morning. The tall one pointed at our car. "That your vehicle, sir?" I blinked. "Yes, it is." "Can you prove that?" Delilah stiffened beside me. I could feel her hand slide quietly into mine. "We've had that Mercury since our youngest graduated high school," she said softly. 26 years. The younger officer started circling the car like a buzzard circling a dying deer. "This plate doesn't match the system. You got registration?" I shook my head slowly. "It's in a file back home. You can run the VIN if you need." "That's convenient," the tall one interrupted, stepping closer. His tone had already shifted from curious to combative. "Sir, step away from the vehicle." It wasn't a request. Delilah gripped my elbow. "This is a mistake. Please. We're just here for coffee." The younger one opened the driver's door without asking. He began rummaging through the glove box, flipping through receipts, napkins, a church program from 2 weeks ago. "This ain't about a stolen car," I muttered. "What was that, sir?" the tall one asked. "This is about the color of our skin and the way we look," I said louder. "That's what this is." "Sir, you need to calm down," he replied, stepping into my space. "We're not causing any trouble," Delilah said quickly. "Please, just check the VIN." The younger cop pulled a photograph from the center console. "Who are these kids?" he asked, holding it up like evidence. "Are they yours?" Delilah's voice cracked. "They're our grandchildren." The picture was from Easter, 2 years ago. All 3 of them dressed up, smiling in our backyard. That photo had lived in our car for years. And now it was a piece of suspicion. "You're accusing us of stealing our own car?" I asked. "There's a mismatch in the system," the younger one said flatly. "We're following protocol." "Your protocol feels a lot like profiling," I snapped. My voice had risen now. My hands trembled, not from age, but from restraint. "Sir, keep your hands visible." That's when I realized we were no longer in control of the moment. Not even close. And then, I heard it, the sound of another car rolling in. Heavy tires on gravel. I turned toward the sound. And for the first time in that whole nightmare, I felt a breath catch in my chest. A black SUV. And a uniform stepping out that made the earth stop spinning for a second. The SUV door opened slow, but purposeful, and then he stepped out. Caleb, our middle child. Our stormed at 6'2", shoulders square as a brick wall, his Marine uniform crisp enough to cut air that I hadn't seen him in 2 months. Not since he was rotated off base and came back home to help with Delilah's blood pressure meds and paint the back porch. He wasn't supposed to visit today. He had errands, a schedule, and things to fix around the house. But somehow, he knew. The tall officer shifted slightly as Caleb approached. Not backing off. No, not that. But you could see it in his stance. A flicker, like he suddenly realized he was part of something bigger than a traffic stop. "Officers," Caleb said calmly. "Can you tell me why you're interrogating my parents?" The taller one turned, adjusting his sunglasses. "Sir, we're conducting a routine check. License plate discrepancy." Caleb's eyes narrowed slightly. His tone remained measured. "This Mercury belongs to Bernard and Delilah Thompson. They've owned it longer than I've worn this uniform. And I've worn this uniform for 14 years. The younger cop opened his mouth, but then closed it. Maybe he sensed it too, that whatever power they thought they had was cracking like old glass. "You searched their car without consent." Caleb continued. "You questioned them without probable cause. You treated them like criminals here, in broad daylight, over a mismatch in a database. Sir, if you could please calm down." "No." That one word silenced everything. That Caleb's voice wasn't raised. "It didn't need to be. I will not calm down. Not while my parents stand in the sun like suspects, while you pull their lives apart piece by piece. You didn't ask. You assumed. And that assumption says more about your training, or lack thereof, than it does about them." I watched him then, standing between the car and the officers. My son. The boy I taught how to ride a bike. The man I watched leave for Iraq. The same man who now stood tall with fire in his chest and steel in his spine. Delilah reached for his elbow. "Caleb, we're okay." "No, Mama," he said, not taking his eyes off the officers. "You're not. And you don't have to pretend to be." By then, people had started to gather. A waitress from the diner had stepped onto the porch, her apron still dusted with flour. A man with a delivery bag stood off to the side, phone raised. A woman in a postal uniform emerged from across the street, watching quietly. "What's going on?" someone whispered. "Cops stopped that couple, been tearing through their car." "For what?" "Don't know. Doesn't look like much of a reason." Delilah leaned into me, and I could feel the tension in her muscles. She wasn't scared of the officers. She was afraid of what this moment might do to Caleb. What it might make him become. He took a step closer to the taller cop. "You owe them an apology." "Sir, we—" "Not to me," he interrupted. "To them." Silence. "You humiliated them," Caleb said, his voice slower now, each word a hammer. "You didn't ask. You didn't verify. You assumed 2 elderly black folks in an old car must be lying or stealing or worse." The postal worker stepped forward. "I've delivered mail to the Thompsons for 11 years, she said. "They're good people. Every Sunday they come here. Always together. Always polite." A young woman added, "They gave me pie when I lost my job, knocked on my door, and left it with a note." And then, one by one, the voices grew. "They brought casseroles when my sister had surgery. Mr. Thompson helped fix my gate last spring. Miss Delilah teaches Sunday school at Grace Baptist. My daughter loves her." The officers didn't speak, because what could they say? They weren't just facing a Marine anymore. They were facing a neighborhood. The taller officer looked to his partner, then back to Caleb. We didn't intend." "Stop," Caleb said, firm but low. "Don't lie to save face." His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. The kind of tired that sits behind the eyes of every black man who's had to explain to his child why they got followed in a store, why they have to keep both hands visible, why they can't afford to get emotional, even when they're right. "You had a choice," he said, "to approach with respect, to investigate properly. But instead, you escalated. You didn't see an elderly couple. You saw color and made a decision." The younger cop shifted his weight. His eyes darted toward the crowd. For the first time, he seemed to realize he was being filmed. The weight of dozens of phones pointed at him. At them. Caleb stepped aside and looked at us, his parents. His mother, trembling in her seat. Me, trying to stand without my cane. Two people who had survived Jim Crow, redlining, backroom whispers, and decades of soft-spoken disrespect. And now this. I won't raise my voice, Caleb continued. I won't threaten you. That's not my way. But you will apologize to my parents. Because that is what decent people do when they get it wrong. Silence again. Until, from behind us, came a voice that IT was the diner owner, white. Mid-60s. Apron dusty with flour and sweat. He stepped onto the patio and spoke with a deep southern drawl that carried across the lot. He's right. Every head turned. You messed up, the man said, voice flat. I've served the Thompsons coffee for over 20 years. They're as good and kind as anyone you'll meet. This was never about the car. We all know it. The officers said nothing to the crowd spoke for them. That's enough now. Say something. Don't hide behind silence. Finally, the tall cop cleared his throat. He looked at Delilah, then at me. We apologize, ma'am. Sir. It was stiff. Hollow. But it came. Delilah didn't nod. Didn't smile. She just blinked slowly and turned her head away. It wasn't real. Not yet. The officers left 5 minutes later, more words. Just quiet retreat. But the damage, it stayed. I tried to sit down slowly, legs stiff, breath shaky. Delilah was already seated, hands folded in her lap. Fingers curled so tight they were white at the knuckles. The crowd lingered. No one wanted to leave. Not because they wanted more drama, no, but because they knew they'd seen something important. Something familiar. Something wrong. Then came the small acts that a young woman placed a bouquet of wildflowers on our table. I'm so sorry, she said. You didn't deserve that. The waitress brought 2 slices of fresh pie and a full pot of coffee. On the house, she whispered, eyes rimmed red. You've been through enough. A teenage boy, maybe 17, came up nervously. I filmed everything, he said. My mom says I can post it, but only if you're okay with it. If not, I'll delete it. I looked at Delilah. She looked at Caleb. And then, slowly, she nodded. Let the world see, she said. We're not ashamed. And with that, the moment began to heal. Not disappear, no. But change. The pie was warm. The coffee was hot. But it wasn't the food that filled us. It was the feeling of being seen. Really seen. Across the table, Caleb still hadn't touched his plate. He just watched us. Watched his mother breathe again. Watched me relax into the booth. You made them see us, son, I said. No, sir, he replied. You've always been visible. I just made sure they couldn't look away this time. The parking lot slowly emptied. But something lingered in the air, something better than feared. It was truth, and maybe even change.